there any other new business?
Yes.
Well, we have an agenda item
Yes.
under new business, which is Cedar Island Marina. Let's deal with that first. Kris Shapiro?
Thank you. I am Kris Shapiro, Cedar Island Marina. I just want to, sorry, I don't have enough copies, so I'm just going to do every other person, but I can email it if you guys want. Or if you want to just pass it down. Yeah. So, this is, just an informal discussion, so we're all clear, there's no application on the table. I'm here to kind of get your guys' input about this. So essentially what happened is, you guys know, a couple of years ago I went in to modify the zoning regulations so we could one day do a residential development on the western end of our marina, which you guys approved the initial phases of it, obviously not approved anything specifically. So I started doing some research into, what would kind of be our issues, as far as it goes. One thing that's good is that there's no rare, plant species or anything, it's just phragmite. There's no environmental status on the site. It's not like wetlands or anything. But one thing I did come about was the definition of height, how Clinton defines height. And essentially, I'm just going to read the last sentence, is they get the beginning grade from March 16th, 1987 Town of Clinton Topographic Survey located in the Office of the Zoning Enforcement Officer. So like if you want to build something, that's where, ground zero is at, on this 1987 Town of Clinton Topographic Survey. So at the time, Eric Knapp, was still here. So I called him up and I said, hey, can you show me the survey so I can see kind of like what the benchmarks are? And he said, no, we actually don't have it in the zoning enforcement office. You got to go find this guy named Art Barden in Westbrook, and he has it. So I went and found him, and he gave me a couple copies, and it just the reason I'm here is I don't think that that's really a fair way to judge the initial height. Now, I understand the purpose of the law. The purpose of the law to set back an initial grade that far is so if I or you want to build a house, or your neighbor does, they don't build it up 10 feet and then they plop the house on top and say, up right on top of here is the baseline. That is unfair. So I started talking with John Kiskowski, is that how you pronounce the last name, about it, and he agreed that this regulation wasn't really good and we needed a better definition of height. So what he advised me to do was look at local towns and see how they do it. And I looked at a few local towns, which I listed on this paper, the ones that I can easily Google. And sure enough, none of them define height by going back to some like 1980 survey or any survey whatsoever. They define it in the way that, it's like a pre-development thing. So for our property, it's clear that we've been using it for the purpose of the property, which is to dredge disposal area. In order for us to excavate that down to the 1987 level would be about 100,000 cubic yards, and you'd have a massive amount of trucks going up and down Commerce and Grove Street. I don't think that anybody would be happy about that. I think that we need to make something, a definition of how height is defined, that A, makes it so that you guys have a lot of control, so somebody can't just come in and build, 10 feet of material, for the purpose of a development and then plop a house on top of it. I also think that there's got to be a way that, we should not be penalized for using the land, like it's zoned for, and like, the Army Corps used it before us. So what I thought was a good revision for this, and I wish John was here because, I sent this past him and he agreed, is where I highlighted the ending sentence of you know, how Clinton defines height from the existing grade shown on the March 16, 1987 Town of Clinton topographic survey located in the office of the zoning enforcement officer. I just think that if you wrote from the pre-development grade, that would, A, give you guys, you know, control so nobody can just kind of use the regulations against you and build some massive, you know, development, but it would also, you know, make a lot of sense and conform to what local towns are doing. So I'm here today not to propose that officially, but to get your guys' feedback on that, to see if, you know, there's something better you guys would like before I just pop a proposal in here. You know, I hope you guys see where I'm coming from. John is totally in agreement with me. When I met with Dave, he agreed too, that something needs to be done about that.
Thanks for doing all that research for us.
Oh, thank you, Beth. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's for me too, not gonna lie. But so I just,
This is informal, right?
yes, it is, John.
2 years ago, I raised the issue.
John,
No.
I don't want to hear it. Seriously.
It's not a public.
Yeah, it's not a public hearing. Anything that this guy says, you should go against, because he's really bad for this
Well,
town. Is he gonna bully you guys like bully the board of finance?
I don't
I
lie.
raised the issue 2 years ago.
Yep.
You've been filling for 2 years.
Months there.
No, we haven't.
You don't have to take it away, you just can't
Okay.
exceed 34 feet.
Yeah.
Tell them the truth.
Why don't you go bully somebody else, John?
Okay.
You know what? Why don't you go bully somebody else?
Hey,
Enough,
not-
that's what he wants.
Yeah.
Um,
You guys were worthless.
So
All
basically, you're talking
regulated.
about that area where you fill, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Once every 4 years. We haven't filled it since the last.
2 years.
Somebody who lives across the street is blind, even though he fills wetlands on his property. He built on a wetland. Yeah, I know.
So you're talking about
You don't know
measuring
what
height
you're
from the area you fill, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
May I? I understand your concern with the topographic map. I think your proposal is a little bit non-specific. I mean, we got too specific into almost non-specific. I think looking at some of the other revisions on how they determine what pre-existing or pre-development grade is important. Because if we don't define that well, you know, then we really don't have any control over it. And at the example you did give about somebody building a house up or building a property up or the land up and then putting a house up, that's what triggered this to be put in. Okay, that's where this came from, was that happened to the town. And so we do need to be a little more specific than what your proposal is. But I do think a map that's not actually in the office is not a valid measurement either, so we do have to come up with something. So I thank you for bringing this to us personally. I think, you know, I'm probably one of the ones responsible for putting that language in there, so it's my fault.
There's a lot going on in this.
But that, you know, it is something that we should look at and it would be follow-up on, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, Alan?
I think we ought to, among other things, Old Saybrook just redefined that portion of their ordinance. I don't recall all the details of it because I just got a notification that they'd done it. I think we should direct our planning consultant to look at that and look at alternatives rather than, you know, we can't, and, you know, it shouldn't be that, if an applicant wants to come in and challenge it, that's of course their right. But I think we should take the initiative and get John to work on that.
Yes, and I think that we probably need to have, you know, some input from things like USGS surveys as well, and get John to, basically to take some of these other sources of height. But I could appreciate having to go running around our garden's office, but that's not the appropriate way to be, you know, to be following up on these things either.
There was one other thing too. I noticed when looking at the regulations, and this actually is a part of the residential thing. This is, in about a year, I'm gonna put a proposal in front of you guys to put up another shed next to our shed, just an indoor boat storage shed. And I started doing some research, and it needs to be 35 feet to fit our lift in. And I noticed that every other, zone is 35 or 40 feet in town. In fact, also every other marine zone I found in other towns is 35 feet. So I'm hoping it wouldn't be an issue with you guys to change it from 30 to 35 feet. I don't know how it got to 30 feet, but I just wanted to bring that up before I actually made an application to. Because we're going to need 35 feet to get our lift in.
Well, the boat is taller than the lift.
Yeah, the boat's taller than the lift, yeah, so the whole thing in order to get the boat in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I thank you for bringing this to our
Yeah.
attention. It clearly is something that requires attention.
Yes.
But really needs some input from some other sources.
Certainly, I wasn't hoping to
Right.
change it, I just wanted to bring this to your attention.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there other new business?
Yeah, I would like to ask Madam Chair, I've been
I spoke 2 years
overwhelmed,
and they fell
by
into
the-
two.
Yeah, you're an idiot.
overwhelmed by the
Say what you
amount
want.
of-
No, I say what's the truth.
You don't
I say what you wouldn't know the truth. Oh, yeah, everybody around here? No, seriously.
Get outside,
Can you just pick on someone your own age? Honestly, you've been out there since I dated you 8 years
we
ago.
need-
He's the most jealous person in this whole town.
Anyway, I filed the
Go
complaint.
live
Go look at
on
the
your
complaint
house.
for
Go live on your house. Go go see somebody else. I don't put up with your crap. Yeah. You know what? You're gonna be dead by the time it's built anyways. It's gonna be like.
Come and get it.
Hey, John,
Yeah, no,
Yeah, it's worthless.
oh, good.
I went up to the Board of Finance meeting, how about that?
Good. No, he welcome. Your father owned it.
John Olsen's ambush of Kris Shapiro is prompted by the location of his home, located on 3 parcels at the end of Pratt Road. His concern is that Cedar Island Marina's plans to build a residential development on several acres of land that they have filled with dredged material that silted under their marina. His concern that this may impair his view of Clinton Harbor may be legitimate. But this was not a public hearing, and bullying Kris Shapiro during his informal discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission was out of line. This video provided as a public service by Kirk Carr, the Kirkster. Thank you for watching.